Hi, I'm Donna Nichols, and I'm a lecturer in the School of Journalism and Mass Communications. And we've called a press conference to help educate the students and faculty on what the effects of a CFA strike will be. We're very fortunate to have as our commentator tonight Robert Rucker, who is a former CNN reporter and the director of the School of Journalism and Mass Communications. Thank you for being here, Bob.
I am happy to do this, and I think the best thing you can do in journalism is keep people informed so they understand what's going on. And the purpose today is to help our students, not only here on our campus, but maybe all over the state, understand what is this strike all about, why should they care, and what does it mean for them. To help us understand this process, we have some special guests on our set. Let's take a look. In the middle is Preston Rudy. He is the local president of the CFA chapter. Over to his left, our right, is Allison McKee, the vice president for the local CFA in San Jose. And Jason Wozniak is left on the right side, left to our scene. And we thank you for being here. You're a member of CFA, correct? Very good. Let's get started here. What is this strike all about? Students keep hearing they're going to have time off. It's a vacation, right? Help clean that up for us.
Well, this is a strike that comes at the end of a long process of bargaining. We've been bargaining since July of last year. And we are bargaining for a salary increase, which is the last portion of our contract that needs to be bargained for. We're in the second year of a contract. We have a 3-year contract. We're asking for a 5% salary increase this year, and we still have next year to bargain for. But right now, the strike is about our 5% salary increase.
Now, we have students here in our television studio that are going to help us ask some of the questions. Sir, your name?
Charles.
Charles, what's your question?
I heard that the administration does have the money, but the discrepancy between the proposed salaries and the requested salaries by the CFA is $70 million, and I was curious what the administration planned to do with that money that they do have.
Does anybody know?
Well, I certainly don't know what they want to do with that money, but if you look at what they've been spending the money on, they seem to be spending a lot of that money on administrators and administrative salaries. The most recent egregious example of this on our campus is the $261,000 that was spent for President Kayumi on his retirement and leaving campus.
And many people were complaining about that. I'm sure students heard about that. What are your thoughts about this strike, and how does it affect students, you think?
I heard that we need a certain number of in-class hours to get credit for the units or for the classes. And I was just curious if losing 5 days of class would affect that in any way.
Allison, you teach in the RTVF program here in San Jose State?
Yeah. I think what you basically should do, I think, what students should do is maintain contact with their professors. I will make sure in my classes that there will be no threat because there will be no threat to students' hours that they earn in class or with class-related activity or work. But during a strike, during the 5 days of the strike, we withhold our labor. We will not work during those 5 days.
And we would ask students to join us on the picket lines and remind you that it's really only 2 days of classes because most classes are Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday. There are occasional Friday classes. And we had in the 5 days, it's only 1 Tuesday, 1 Thursday, 1 Monday and 1 Wednesday, and that's only if it goes for 5 days.
Now, Jason, we haven't heard from you yet, and I want to bring you in on the conversation. Students are thinking you want the students to join the faculty on the picket line. Isn't that unusual? And they may be asking, is that safe?
Yeah, so I want to come back to the question about what are we striking for. I'm a lecturer here, and as much as the 5% is extremely important, I think what we need to look at also is this bigger picture that we're striking for improvements in education. We're striking to improve the quality of teaching and learning that happens in and outside of the classroom. Anytime you strike for a salary increase, you also strike for time, in the sense that if we get an increase, that means people like myself who have to take out loans just to teach here, who have to maybe pursue more than one job, if we get a raise, that means I have more time. And if I have more time, then it has more time that I can dedicate to my students. And so I think we have to look at some of the bigger picture here and say that part of what the strike is about, at least in my view, is the improvement of education. And I think that why do we need students out on the picket lines? Because all of this is related to student realities at San Jose State, in the sense that we need to forge bonds in which we support each other. When tuition goes up, then the professors and lecturers have your backs. And when we want to improve education opportunities for everyone, then we receive support for you. So I think a large part of this is the beginning of building bonds that allow us to retake our education.
And the picket line is not a dangerous place. It's
No.
a place where we just walk on the sidewalks, and we're informing people about the fact that there is a strike, and that we want people to join us on the picket line and not go to work and not come to campus, but stay on the margins of the campus.
Very good. I have Dana here. She has a question.
How would this strike affect my schoolwork and deadlines?
And the last part?
And
I'm sorry?
deadlines.
And deadlines.
Can I answer that?
Please.
So I think this is a point that Allison made too. I think that it's really important to be in communication with your professors and lecturers. And I know as a lecturer that I work on a team of other lecturers, and we're constantly talking about how this is not going to prejudice students. We want to make this as seamless as possible. And we want to make sure that we have open lines of communication with our students to make it clear that, this is not meant to prejudice you in any ways. And so I think it's important to open up lines of communications with your professors.
It's
And
very important for us to know what students are thinking as we're doing this program. What are your thoughts after hearing what we've talked about so far?
I'm a little relieved to know that the faculty is open to keep communication with us, even though they're in a strike.
And we do want you to succeed. All of us do want students to succeed. And let's talk a little bit about the issue of graduation. I hear a lot of students are concerned, well, I won't be able to graduate on time. Is that correct?
Let me speak to that. A 5-day strike is not going to compromise anybody's graduation at all. It simply won't. It won't do that. It is restricting labor for 5 days. I know students sometimes have been sick and missed a day of class. I know I've been sick sometimes and missed a day of class. Or I've gone to conferences, and 5 days is not going to threaten anybody's graduation. So I wanted to be clear about that. And I also wanted to address the question of open communication one more time with your faculty. I would urge you to talk with your faculty, not necessarily, to feel free to come to their office hours to ask if you have any ambivalences, if you have any concerns. I'm very open to talking to my students if they have concerns, and I want them to feel informed and empowered.
I like that Dr. McKee said she wants to see students come to office hours. We all enjoy it when students come and interact with us. Kendall, you have a question.
Yes, I wanted to know, will I be able to reach my professors? And if so, if I contact them via email, how soon will they be able to respond to us?
So communicating via email that has to do with a class is part of our work, and therefore, if your faculty are on strike, they will not be returning your emails until after the strike. Now, the end of the strike could happen after 2 days, after 1 day. The end of the strike may even happen before it starts if the chancellor agrees to speak with the faculty representatives, which could happen at midnight is when it usually happens in labor disputes.
So if students wanted to communicate, we're basically saying you can't do it by email. Do you think that'll be a problem for students?
I think so, just because if we have questions concerning like upcoming assignments and we need like a quick answer, we're not going to be able to get that in time.
And while I have you here, Kendall, understanding what a strike is all about. You've been in school for a long time. You've heard of the term. Do you understand the meaning for the faculty?
Not necessarily.
Right, good. Then we're doing a good service tonight. That's the part I really like. Let me go up to Jason and say, if a student wanted to know more about the assignment, but you can't communicate by email, what should they be thinking? Anticipate what the teacher wanted, go on to Canvas and see if there's some information. Where else might they get some information?
Yeah, I think that this is why I'm emphasizing that it's really important in the lead up to April to have open dialogue with your professors or lecturers about what can and can't happen. I also want to stress that I think we should be contacting the chancellor and those people in power to say, we want to be in touch with our professors and educators, therefore settle this strike issue now. This is, again, the money is there. It's a question of political will. Do they want to allocate the funds that are going to make your educations better? And so I think there's a need for all of us to put pressure on people on top to say, we want open communication about our learning experience, but you need to help make this happen.
And if I can say one small thing, which is we're sort of focused on the strike because that's what's right ahead of us. But what we need to be clear about is that this drastic action is because the slow, persistent erosion of the education at the CSUs, which has been the result of the lack of investment in what happens in the classroom between the student and the faculty. And so the 5 days that we're envisioning is a way to stop this long-term erosion of the education at the CSUs.
Good. I'm also curious to know if students have been told where they can go to gather. Can they come to the classroom? Can they come on campus? What's the advice from the union?
They can come to the picket line. That might be the best way to find their faculty member and perhaps ask them a question. But we are asking that students join us on the picket line so that we have a big crowd at the edge of campus, and it's quite clear to the people that are the administrators and the people that are supposed to be directing this university that everybody is united in demanding better education and making sure that we have the faculty at this campus and at all 23 campuses of the CSU that make this the kind of quality high education system that we all want.
Can I make one comment about this?
Sure.
Political participation is educational. You will learn more about yourselves, about your friends, about school, about life by participating in these political projects than you will in 5 days of class. That's my belief. So I think to be involved in a political process is an educational experience. And I think it's something to think about because in terms of gathering, if you gather to talk about the political process, if you gather to talk about what's happening at your university, you're going to learn a lot. And so I highly encourage that.
Well, this is definitely a year to learn about politics, but Maria, what do you think? This is going to be a learning experience for you, don't you think?
It is going to be a learning experience for the students.
Very much so. You have a question.
I have a question. How disruptive would this strike be?
The campus community as well as for individual students.
Allison?
I think it will be disruptive. It won't be combative in the sense that there will be no violence, there will be no aggression, but it will be disruptive in the sense that if the chancellor truly does not want to prioritize education, the faculty who teach the students and students' experience, if they don't want to prioritize that, then we will strike, and that will take out 5 days. 5 days. That will be disruptive to a syllabus, to a course, and that will be something that it's not something that the faculty will have done. It's something that the CSU will have failed to address and take care of, and so I expect that it will be somewhat disruptive, but again, not aggressive, not scary, not anything like that.
And it will be disruptive because the Chancellor's Office and the Board of Trustees, if you've been listening to the meetings that have been happening in the last 2 days, it seems to me they are intent on fighting the faculty that teach here. And they are pushing this disruption because they refuse to acknowledge the realities, which is that the faculty have a lower purchasing power. We have a harder time hiring faculty who can live at the salaries that are being offered by the CSU, which are out of range with the salaries that you find at the University of California and at the community colleges. And this is disruptive to your education on a daily basis. And this small creative disruption, if I can quote Jason, of a strike holds out the possibility of renewing our university and making it the kind of institution it used to be, where the focus was on the instruction in the classroom, the relationship between the professors and the students, and that's where we need to put our money.
I just wanted to comment, this is before the students' time, this current group of students' time, but a number of years ago there was a furlough, and we lost pay, we lost time in the classroom, and CSU seemed to take that in stride. I just my personal experience was I had a 4-course load. I had one course was 183 people, students in it. I had no help grading. How much of a quality education was that for students with 183 people in it? One professor, no help. That was disruptive to their education, and that's the kind of thing that we really want not to happen again.
That's a powerful example with a large classroom. I think students can understand it. You've probably been in large classrooms. You want some attention from either the teacher or a teaching assistant, but if there isn't anyone there, then how does it feel as a student?
As a student, it feels like the teachers aren't getting enough pay for that, and that discourages them to give the students the attention that they need. And I believe a raise would really encourage them to focus more on the students and then give a better learning experience as well.
Very good. But is the picture we're trying to paint here today is that the administration is always the bad guy? They're not seeing anything but what they want?
No, I don't think, by no means. I think if you talk to students, they might have lots of examples of professors that they have complaints about, that, are not responding to emails or not in some way providing them with the kind of education they want. That certainly is a concern of ours, and we would like, a university where there's high-quality professors that stay here and where the place is run well so that that doesn't happen. But I think, right now we're in the middle of the build-up to a strike, which, is the issue, and that sets up this contrast between the faculty and the administrators. And for the moment, the administrators are the ones, Chancellor White in particular, they have the decision-making power to set the direction for this disagreement between faculty and administration.
Very good. And right now we have someone from the journalism school who's one of our lecturers, Professor Ralph Nichols. You have a question?
My name is Ralph Nichols, and I teach full-time at a community college in San Jose. I was wondering if one of the panelists could speak to the disparity in faculty salaries between community college teachers and Cal State University teachers.
Well, yes. So the average pay for faculty at the CSU is around $45,000. And I don't have the figures on me right now for the average pay for the community colleges, but I know that if you look at the salaries for the CSU faculty for the last 10 years, and you compare that to the changes in the salary for this UC faculty and the community college faculty, the rise in pay has kept up with cost of living in ways for the UC and the community colleges that it has not for the CSU. So of the three systems in California's public education, higher education system, the one group that has lost purchasing power are the faculty at the CSU.
We're talking basically about a living wage for people.
We are
And
talking
Ralph,
about a living wage.
As a lecturer, I'm just curious, what is the challenge for someone like you who wants to come to San Jose State or one of the CSUs, but you hear about the pay structure? How is it being reacted to off campus?
Well, the challenge is that living in the Bay Area is one of the most expensive places in the United States to live. We pay higher for milk, higher for gas, and teaching salaries are not that high to begin with. And it's my understanding that CSU faculty hasn't had a raise in years. Is that correct?
We have had the most recent raise we had, which was part of this contract, was a 1.6% raise that went across for everybody in the first year of our 3-year contract. So a 5% raise that we're asking for in the second year of our contract is really digging ourselves out of a hole, because in the period when we took a furlough in 2009, 2010, we lost almost 10% in our pay, and that has yet to be recovered.
Do you think it's realistic, though, that the state will come up with the money to eventually bring us up at San Jose State and other CSUs to a level where we'll match the cost of living issues?
Well, our bargaining, as we've said, the administration has never said they do not have the money. They have said they would rather spend the money elsewhere on other projects. So the CSU has money, doesn't need to charge tuition to students to make the money to pay the faculty. It doesn't need any more money from the taxpayers of California right now in order to pay the faculty a 5% raise in their salary right now. And CFA has been at the forefront of lobbying legislators in Sacramento to get more money for a public higher education system, the CSU in particular.
Can I comment about
Go ahead,
this?
Jason.
So according to the California Budget and Policy Center, state spending per student at CSU and the UC remains near the lowest point in more than 30 years after you adjust for inflation. Additionally, since 1990 and 91, tuition and fees at CSU for California residents have more than tripled. The average student from San Jose State graduates with $25,000 in student debt. All the while, our salaries remain stagnant, or if you adjust for inflation, they're lower than what they were pre-recession. So the question is, like, how are we going to change that relationship? Like, how are we going to reverse some of these trends which hurt all of you students, that hurt all of us faculty, and that make our lives precarious on an everyday basis? Like, we're this close, all of us, to falling off some very dangerous cliffs. And it shouldn't have to be that way, because we just want to have an opportunity to study and learn together.
Well, you refer to it as a cliff falling off, but for people who have to live with this wage, our part-time faculty, the lecturers that come in, what's the impact on your lives?
Well, I feel like the personal impact on adjunct faculty at San Jose State would be enormous if we don't get this salary increase. And what I'm wondering is what happens after this 5-day strike ends. If the salary increase is not there, then what is the follow-up after that?
Well, if we have a 5-day strike, that is going to be international news, because this is the biggest public higher education system in the world right now. And we have the biggest system in the country. So there is going to be international coverage of this story. It's going to make the national news. It's going to be very disruptive. So that's going to be difficult for either side to not come to the bargaining table over that. If we get to the 5th day, then on Wednesday the 20th, we all go back to work. And we reconfigure ourselves and figure out what it is we're going to do next in order to get a proper raise that acknowledges the work that we do with the students in the CSU system.
I think it's a powerful number if you think about it. The largest educational system in the world could possibly be disrupted. Mm-hmm. The educational experience could be at least stopped for a short time. Christiana, you have a question.
Yeah, I have a question that I think a lot of students like myself are wondering, where money is being spent if it's not being spent towards faculty salaries.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Where is the money being spent? If the CSU is not spending it on faculty, and we don't expect, I think, all faculty to get every penny that comes through the system, no. But where is it being spent?
Well, so one of the places where there seems to be a lot of spending is the hiring of more administrators and administrators with higher salaries. So if you look at the money that's coming into the CSU, there over time, over the last 10 or 15 years, you notice that the absolute number of employees who are administrators has gone up, and they are also the people with the highest salaries, and they've been getting increases. There's been a flat line for the number of faculty that have been hired, and the discrepancy between tenure line faculty and temporary contingent contract faculty has been such that more faculty are being hired in that contingent category, which is people that are lecturers that get hired to teach 1, 2, 3, or 4 courses and are on a contract that gets renewed on a periodic basis.
Allison, if you were going to explain this to your class, how would you make it real simple, the concept that Preston was just talking about?
I actually was I do talk to my class, because I want to stay in classes, because I want to stay in touch with them. And I have experience both as a lecturer and a tenure line faculty member, and the moment I came on as a lecturer, I joined the union because my existence was so precarious. I was hired to teach one class here initially, and I worked at 2 other different universities. I worked at UC Santa Cruz and I worked at Stanford, and I was what is known as a freeway flyer because I was always on the freeway, going between one campus and another, not available to my students as much as I should have been at any of the 3 universities. And so for me, I explain that to my students because I think students don't always know the difference, between, and there's no reason they should, because lecturers are every bit as qualified as the tenure line faculty. They're just as well trained. They lead more precarious existences than most of the tenure line faculty. But I think students don't have visibility into these issues, and there's no really way that they can unless I help and others help, unless we can talk to each other and they can understand, well, why isn't my professor here for office hours, or why is he or she always late? They're coming from 45 minutes to an hour to 2 hours away sometimes. It's not just that they, stopped to get a cup of coffee. And so these things have real impacts on students' education.
That certainly must have resonated with you, that you probably have a commute, you know what that's like, and the cost of paying for that commute. Do you have a follow-up thought that you want to ask them or talk to them about?
I just want to say that I think it's very unfortunate that there is such an imbalance with the funding that is going towards the CSUs, because teachers and faculty are really the pillars for success in this society. So I think that there is a huge imbalance that just needs to be taken care of.
Very good. Very nicely said. And what if I challenged the group over there? I love to play devil's advocate. What if I said, we cannot really keep going down this road of more money, more money, more money. There's got to be a stop because the taxpayer is ultimately paying for all of this. What would you all say about that?
Well, historically, California has been a high-tax, high-service state. And the reason California is the California we know, where the film industry, the computer industry, the high-tech industry is here in California. It's not in Massachusetts. It's not in New York. It's not in Chicago. It's in California. Part of the reason for that is because the state of California, the taxpayers of California, built up these major public institutions of higher education, such that these are the prides of the state and the United States. We have some of the best universities in the world, and they're public institutions. They're available to everybody. You just have to be smart enough to get into the school, and that's what it should be, so that everybody can get the education, because the creativity of California is in its population, but only when you add the key element, which is an education.
Very good. Stephen Lopez has joined me.
Yes.
You have a question?
Yes, my question is, from the beginning of the negotiations, why wasn't 10% asked for to go to 5%? Because it seems like they went to 2% and went right to below the halfway point with you. And maybe it's easier to negotiate higher and going to the middle.
Well, the 5% figure, as I understand it, was asked for because that was in the range of figures that were being awarded both to administrators and to employees, both in other systems and in the CSU more generally. And it was, if we had asked for 10%, it would have been too high of a number, and there would have been no way that we would have been taken seriously. So I think, part of what's missing here is that we've got a third year, and there's going to be a number attached to that year too, some kind of an increase. And myself personally, I think we should ask for another 5% in the third year of our contract to begin to get us out of the hole we've gotten ourselves into because of the lack of pay over the last 10, 15 years.
This negotiating ploy, how does it sit with you, Stephen?
Well, I think that if you would have started high, you could always go, come down. You can never go up. Mm-hmm. And it just seemed like they went all the way down for you, and now you're going to look like you're stubborn at 5%. Mm-hmm. And so that's what my thought was.
He's concerned that we're not asking for enough.
Yeah, no, I got it.
I certainly empathize with that. I would like to have seen, in the best of all possible worlds, I would certainly have liked to have, asked for 10%. I really think it just, from my understanding at the statewide level and so forth, it simply wouldn't have flown. It would have gone nowhere fast, not even have entered into a discussion at that point. But since there is a history of a 5% being a raise that has historically been something that's been granted in the past to comparable entities, that's where I think dialogue began.
And what I would say is that the CFA is a membership-driven organization. If our members think that 10% is what we should be asking for, that could happen. But
Yeah.
that needs to be generated from the bottom up. And if we hear that message, that's the bargaining position that's going to be taken, and we're going to fight for that.
As a journalist, I'm kind of amazed that you got, 97% of the faculty here at San Jose State.
No, 89, almost 90% of faculty at San Jose State
Right, that's still
membership
very
voted.
high.
Of the membership voted, and of that, 94.4% voted to strike.
Now, find 94% of anybody
And 80,
who wants
and
to do something.
it was of the membership CSU wide, 80% turned out to vote, and that was the 94.4% that voted to strike. So there is real unity around this,
And this is unusual.
across 23 campuses.
23 campuses, that's amazing. Amanda, you have a question?
Yeah, so why isn't the chancellor willing to give the 5% increase?
I don't know. I mean, so the chancellor was here in November at San Jose State. He's been going and visiting every campus across the system. He has asked this question persistently, and he continuously refuses to answer and say, this is not my responsibility, this is the responsibility of the bargaining team. So in public documents, the CSU and the chancellor have said they have priorities for other things that they want to spend the money on. I'm not entirely clear what those are and what would be more important than what happens in the classroom with the teachers.
How about that answer? The chancellor might be, if he heard this, say, well, wait a minute, you're not thinking about the technology that students want to use. You're not thinking about the upgrades on campuses. We have an older campus with a lot of challenges. So there are a lot of things to spend that money on and spread it around. So the faculty want this 5%, but then what about the other issues? How do students feel about that?
Well, I know I value in class like dialogue and being able to talk to my professors, and so I know that if the strike was to go through, we're going to have to cut down on a lot of faculty. So does that mean I'm going to have to do a lot of online classes? That means less office hours. So I personally would like to have the in-class participation between myself and the professors instead of having to cut down.
And do you understand that this is a huge state with a population that continues to grow and grow and grow? Is it realistic that that's ever going to be able to be maintained? A one-on-one or very close to one-on-one?
Well, for me, I've been able to do it. I take advantage of office hours, so I like them. I wouldn't have been able to pass a lot of my classes if I didn't get that, so it's really valuable to me.
Very good. Jason, this is the kind of student we want to see, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I love the questions and the line of thinking, and I think you point to a really important fact of education, that the most important resource in education is people, is professors. You don't have education without the one-to-one relationship between a professor and student. And so the question I have is, why wouldn't you invest more in that? To me, there's no question. Why wouldn't you invest more in the people that make education happen? I also think it's time that we challenge the narrative and say that there is money available to invest in education. It's a question of priorities. We need to stop believing in what we call, or what people call, austerity logic, which is in hard times you cut back on social services like education, healthcare, and housing. It doesn't have to be that way. Income inequality is at the highest point that it's been since the Great Depression. There's money available, but it shouldn't be coming off of our backs and making our lives more difficult. I think we have to challenge this narrative.
Challenges, Bianca. What do you think? You have a question?
My question is, will this make my tuition go up?
No, it will not.
How can you be confident about that?
Well, if you look at the history of tuition and salaries for the faculty, tuition has gone up and down, mostly up, but salary for the faculty does not vary at all, doesn't change in any way in relationship to those tuitions and fees that are charged to the students, nor does it vary with the amount of money that the CSU is getting from the state of California. So there seems to be no relationship between how much they're charging you and how much they're paying us.
That is a big concern for all students. Tuition's been going up over the last 10, 15 years. But having said that, do you understand as a student, do other students understand, with the cost of living, especially here in Silicon Valley going up, these costs are necessarily going to be going more and more in the direction you don't want.
Yeah, I definitely don't want the tuition to go up, so I think that this strike is necessary, so it benefits us, so we don't have to make these cuts, even if it isn't tuition increases, but it is going to affect us. So like we were discussing before, how there's not going to be enough, in-class time with professors, one-on-one, things of that nature. So even if it's not necessarily like the increase, I think it's necessary that, we help these professors and kind of stand up with them, because it's going to affect us all, and we all need to work together for our education.
Right, and CFA, both now and in the past, has sided with students in contesting the need for higher tuition and higher fees for students. And we have been with students opposing those student fees and opposing those increases in tuition without a proper investment by the state and monitoring of where the money is going within the CSU and where it's being spent, rather than automatically going to, the ATM machines that are the students.
Can I just say too, like for the student that asked that question and other students, like I think there's a real need for you to organize and start asking these questions to people that are in power. I think like you have to organize your voices. And I think you have to make them very clear, and you have to speak truth to power and say, there's no way that our tuition should go up. There's no way that I should go into debt.
For an education.
For an education. Because there's money available where this doesn't have to happen. But the only way that power cedes anything is if you make a demand. And so you have to make some demands.
Well, Bernadette is here to speak truth to this powerful group.
I know you touched on this earlier, but just for clarification, where and how long would the strike take place?
When and how?
Go ahead,
It's
Allison.
when? It's April 13th, 14th, and 15th, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then 18th and 19th, Monday and Tuesday.
And why was it staggered over a weekend?
It's a good time for the two sides to get together and talk about what's been happening and come to an agreement.
I just wanted to, I really resonated with what you said about being the freeway flyer and commuting. Students also are commuting from at least 2 hours away, like myself, and it's just unfortunate that this hasn't been like disputed yet, and like the chancellor can't see how like this really affects students. So,
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I think students and faculty understand better than anybody each other's situations in some ways. I mean, I know my students come from all over, and I know they are struggling with money and jobs and balancing all kinds of things, just as their faculty are. And there would be no university without students, and there would be no university without faculty. And so why is that not the most important point to put the educational budget? Why is that not the most important thing? Student experience and faculty's ability to teach them and reward them for doing so.
Sandeep is here, and he's going to use his new technology to ask a question.
So I was doing a little research a couple weeks ago on our campus website, and I noticed that with all these new buildings being put up around campus, the Student Union, Spartan Complex, the Student Wellness Center, the campus village that is being under construction right now, and the new Student Rec Center that is coming, that's over $400 million that is being put into these buildings. So how do you guys feel that these buildings are being put up, but yet the faculty is not being paid?
Well, I think typically to build buildings is a separate contract, is a separate part of a budget for a big organization like the CSU. So they put money aside to build and build new buildings, et cetera. So they're kind of separate pots. The payment of salaries and personnel, that's one set of money, and building new buildings is a separate set of salaries. But it does set up a sort of contradictory issue when you have new buildings going up, and meanwhile, the people in those buildings are kind of limping around, suffering in one way or another, and not able to take advantage of them as fully as they might if they were properly compensated.
Sandeep did some homework and did that research to develop your question, but what did you think about the answer? Yes, they're spending money on buildings, but that's a separate line in the budget. Faculty are over here, and they're not getting what they want.
Well, I definitely understand where you're coming from, that they are two separate things. But as a student, I've been here this is my 4th year, and I still haven't, there's many buildings I haven't stepped into yet. I've never lived on campus, so knowing that a lot of this money is going into buildings that I may never step in, I'd rather have that money going towards faculty. As many students were saying, we enjoy that one-on-one time, the office hours, which we all take advantage of. So having that money go towards faculty, something that I'm actually going to use, would be more resourceful to me.
Very good. I have a thought, and while we're in the midst of talking about faculty coming to San Jose State, Silicon Valley, cost of living high, many of the programs on this campus are doing recruitments right now, trying to bring in full-time faculty as well as part-time faculty. So many times when they look at the price tag of what goes on here in terms of housing costs, it's see you later.
Yes, it is.
How will this situation help that thinking?
It'll be a step towards regaining ground that we've had with lost earning power. It can. I know in my department we've lost searches, in fact, because we can't pay faculty adequate sums to bring them into this high cost of living environment. So hopefully, with an increased salary and an increased salary, not just salary that also then goes into pensions and so forth, we'll be able to compete more for people that we wanted to recruit, have brought in. They want to come here, they can't afford to come here. And instead of positions going open and begging, and having a failed search, we'll actually be able to bring in good faculty, more good faculty, because we have good faculty now, but we'll be able to retain them, we'll be able to bring them in and compete.
Can I just say, too, that I don't know any professors or teachers, for that matter, that go into this field to become wealthy. But we would like to imagine that we could at least not have to worry about our rent and paying our own student loans, and if we have children, providing for our children. So it's just a question of being comfortable enough to where we can do our job and just live like a halfway dignified life. I don't know professors or teachers that want to be rich, to be honest, because of what we do. It's just a matter of can we just be comfortable enough to live a dignified life and teach the students the way that they deserve to be taught.
And engage the passion in the classroom with the student. You have a question, Donna.
I do. I know you guys encourage us to support and join you guys on the picket lines during the strike, but what else can we as students do prior to the strike to help support you?
Well, you can do what you're doing right now, which is getting informed about the strike, getting informed about the life conditions of your professors and what it is that's going on with them, and then you can talk about that with your colleagues. You can organize your fraternities, sororities, other organizations to formally come out in support of the faculty. You can help us hand out flyers to other students. We're going to be holding events on campus to make sure that students understand and other faculty understand. You can ask questions of your faculty when you're in your classes and say, I think we should spend time talking about this because I'm interested in this. Those are just a few things that you can do. You can write to Tim White. You can write to the legislators in Sacramento and ask them, can you help us resolve this crisis that we're having with our public institution?
I would add to that and say, here in the School of Journalism, you have Facebook. We have several pages for the school that you can write to. And I would just love to see students go back to writing letters to the editor and send it to the Spartan Daily or talk to the Update News students because, quite frankly, your voice there is most welcome. So you might want to talk to your friends about doing that.
Absolutely.
Okay. What are your thoughts about this otherwise?
I think, I've learned a lot just from coming here and you guys speaking all about it. And I think it's really encouraging and important for students to understand that you guys are wanting more of a life balance, but also to be able to help prepare us for the future. So I think as students, and which is why I asked that question, to be able to help support, because it's important for us to take charge in our own education and be able to join together, like you guys said, and really build that bond between the staff and students to be able to make a change, because one person can't just make a change. We need to be able to do it together, and I think that's important.
And I think, the other thing you can do is follow Jason's advice, which is to become organized. Take an active interest in what's happening to your university and make sure that it's a university that works for you and that really is addressing the problems you have. So if you have a difficulty paying for this school, we should change it so that the school is available and you get the education and you don't have to go in debt to get that education.
Can I just add one thing? I would make one request. Just like talk to your friends and just speak truth to power. It's like what needs to happen. And if there's enough of you, then there's some sort of hope there.
And it also means students have the right to disagree with us.
Yes,
At least their point of view should be heard.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things I tell students, if you're not comfortable with this, please come talk to me. I'll listen. I absolutely want to hear what I want to do is hear my students and help my students. That's
Develop
what I want.
their own
and develop
opinions.
their own, to develop. That's what I want.
Very good. Professor Nichols is back with me. Donna?
Yes. I first want to thank all the students for coming out and taking a part in their education. But I wanted to also address something that Jason said. We didn't become professors to become rich. And it's much like the reason you and I went into journalism. You're not going to become rich going into journalism, but there's something that stuck with me. And that is sometimes you make a difference. And I can't tell you how rewarding it is as a professor to have students come back from 10 years or 15 years ago, and you see how successful they have become. And I feel that I have made a difference. And each and every one of these students, I think, can make a difference too, whether it's writing a letter or a legislator. And the CFA will have available addresses, email addresses, and snail mail addresses if students are willing to do that.
I think it's fantastic. I would add, this week we had some of our alumni come back and talk to one of my classes, and I was impressed that this former student told the class, we went into journalism because we like telling the truth. And sometimes telling the truth doesn't make you rich, but you go home at night and you feel really good about helping somebody else. And I think that's a major part of it. Having worked at CNN, yes, I left television and a pay cut to come into higher education, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. Wouldn't trade it for anything. But I have to be a good journalist here, we both have to, and say, what are you going to promise students after the strike? What can they expect?
Well, we're going to continue to fight for the students to get the kind of education they deserve. We work with students, so lobby days are coming up for the CFA, where we're going to go visit Sacramento and talk to our legislators, and we always bring along students with us to help us do that lobbying, both for better funding for the CSU and for the kind of CSU system that will serve both the faculty and the students. So we continue to fight for good public higher education and the interests of the students as we see them, and we work with the students in trying to make the CSU a better place.
Can I just say, too, I think this is an exciting moment that opens up possibilities where students and faculty can start talking to each other about what are the needs of the university community. And I think that if we're true to any belief in democracy, then it's not that we can make promises without first hearing from students. I think it's important to hear from students, like, what are the things that you're concerned about? What are the things that you would like to see differently? How can we work together to make this a better university community for everyone involved? So I think there's a democratic process that this type of event, a strike, so on and so forth, might open up. And I think it's an exciting time to try and exploit that, but it takes organization. And so hopefully that happens.
No, actually, I want to know, what do you think we can do as faculty to help understand or help our students better understand why this is important?
Well, as they say, faculty teaching conditions are student learning conditions. And I think it's important to look at who our student body is. Who's the student body of the CSU? And it's a different population than you see in the community colleges and the UCs. We share some of the same students with the community colleges, but when they're disrespecting faculty by offering us 2% in a boom year, when they give us nothing in a recession, they're really disrespecting our students, and they're disrespecting the people that our students come from, entire communities. And I think there's an element of race and class in this. Why is there consistent underfunding of the CSUs? Who's really not being served when that happens?
So we know that the CSU services a lot of underrepresented communities all over the state of California. And the faculty that come here, many of us came here because we want to teach in that academic environment. And yet, we're wondering if we can survive.
Yes.
That's the basic point.
Yep. Yeah.
Very good. Any final thoughts?
I think if I can add something that we should think about this, that why is it that there is underfunding of the instruction and the work of the CSU at a time when we are primarily serving first-generation college students and students from the multiple ethnic and racial communities that make up the California state? That was not the case before. That's the case now. We're supposed to be operating under austerity budgets. The faculty are supposed to volunteer their time rather than be paid for their time to do the education for the population in California that now have been denied education for so many years. So this is as much a civil rights issue as anything else. And I think, I don't have the exact explanation for this, but it is odd that there's a coincidence of this austerity in the budgeting for the CSU at the same time that we have a population of students who traditionally have not been in higher education and who are finally here, and they should get the same kind of high quality education that administrators who used to be at this system in the 1960s and 70s got when they were here.
Can I just add one thing to this? That the NEA, the National Education Association, has a lot of data about this, that student debt disproportionately impacts people of color. The data's out there. It's very clear that people of color are disproportionately impacted by student debt. And this is unfair because it reproduces systems of indenture that shouldn't be here. And we need to, if we believe in any notion of equality, democracy, so on and so forth, then this has to stop. Because it's impacting certain groups of people a lot harder than it's impacting others. And that's just not fair.
And one other thing, I think what we're seeing across the United States is that there's new activism among students of color. African American students have been leading this with the Black Lives Matter movement. And what they are asking at places like Missouri and other campuses is that we don't just have the diversity of the catalog that shows off what's going on at a campus. We have real diversity, which may mean changing curriculum. It may mean changing this kind of services and the activities that go on. And those are people intensive. Those require the attention of the faculty and the full participation of the faculty, which needs to be then rewarded so that we have the time and the energy and can dedicate the effort to remake the university, not just as a catalog page, but where diversity really becomes deep diversity, where really we change all that's necessary to change to really make it an education that really caters to the population of people that are here now.
Dr. McKee, you get the last word.
I don't want to strike, but I will if it comes down to that. And I did not come to San Jose State University to strike. That's the last thing I want. If it comes down to that and the Chancellor's office does not meet us, then that's what I'll do for the sake of my colleagues and also for the sake of my students in our collective kind of fight for a better education.
Well, I thank each member of the CFA for being here today, and I want to thank all the students. I think it's very impressive that students care enough to want to ask questions and get a more deeper understanding of what's going on. And the last thought I would offer is this: it's not a well-kept secret. San Jose State is an excellent school, and it has many programs all over campus that are doing exceptional things. And yet recently I was advised that in one department on campus they were doing recruiting to hire a bunch of faculty, and they were only able to hire 50% of the people they wanted to bring in. And it was largely due to the fact that people wanting to come here looked at the cost and said, I don't think my family can survive. That's something that we have to continually address, and that's the point of this session today. the School of Journalism and Mass Communications is proud to be able to offer this service to our students and to the community, and we hope you stay in touch. Remember, learn by doing, and make sure you keep up with what's going on. Thank you. Take care.